Attention needs exercise. And one of the simplest ways that we do this is through reading. But kind of where this point is starting from is that when we read just online articles, random little stuff we find, it's closer to when we read stuff out of a magazine, which has its place in the world. It's not like it shouldn't exist, but it's no substitute for longer form reading. And the reason for this has to do with the way that our attention gets spread across the time. That when we're reading a short article, we can kind of skim it or kind of not pay attention, same thing like for a magazine article, whether that or online, because we don't really have to pick up that thread later. Not only do we not have to even pay attention to what we read earlier to make sense of what shows up later, because later will just be a different article, but it also avoids the thing where what a lot of the value it comes from when we read a proper book is that on the time between readings is when we come to a lot of realizations, because we're kind of keeping a thread in the back of our mind for where we were, what we were reading about, what was happening, and that gives it a chance to not just kind of sit in the background of our brain, but also to intermesh with the things happening in our lives. And that's when a lot of the interesting discoveries, realizations, connections can happen in a way that just can't for these short terminal articles. Again, whether in print or online. Now, I'll also say that while I am also a sucker for convenience, and admittedly I put plenty of the books on Kindle app on smartphone, because it's convenient to read in lines, it's convenient to be able to, read at night after the lights go out, I'll put on, redshift mode or whatever. Ultimately, I still find myself moving back whenever I can to paper, mostly because, if you're reading on one of these kind of devices, it's seconds away from just a few finger flicks away from becoming, a social feed or short articles or checking email or all kinds of other things that distract us and let us just sort of step in that muck until we find ourselves kind of stuck in it and distracted. And sure enough, though our intention was to read long form, it's so easy, so easy. Same thing happens on a computer screen, where because a computer is capable of so much, one of the downsides is it can actually make it so much easier to, like I say, be a few just sort of simple mouse gestures away from now I'm doing something else entirely unrelated to what I meant to be doing, because it only took an instant. And that's where when you're reading something made out of wood that has this nice thing of it doesn't just poof turn into something distracting. It doesn't suddenly become messages from all your friends or work emails or anything else that pulls your attention away without you actively setting it down, setting it aside, and deciding, I'm no longer doing that. It's easier to notice when we make those changes because it involves us changing. But anyway, the reason I bring this up is also related to, of course, it's part of why in Gamekito Club we work on longer-term game projects. Why we'll take games that have a 1 or 5 month schedule as opposed to kind of the game jam 24, 48 hour kind of sprint mentality. And it has to do with the same kind of effect of the sustained attention. That we can exercise our attention in this way, where we have to pay attention to what we're doing and do it in a way that we can pick it up a week later, 2 weeks later, a month later, be looking at what we did at the beginning and still making sense of it, requires different ways of thinking about our project, requires a different kind of discipline, requires a different kind of planning, requires a different amount of approach, different kind of communication between team members, in a way that just doesn't when it's all sort of crammed in there right from the start, smashed, and then done. And so this is just one more way that we try to practice focusing, try to practice our attention, try to exercise our attention to get better at sustaining it. Because part of where that's so powerful is in all kinds of areas of our lives, there's problems where if we won't attack it with sustained attention, we're going to rule out all kinds of good solutions. We're not going to discover them, we're not going to notice them, we're not going to be able to take full advantage of them because certain kind of problems can't be solved without sustained attention, without being able to back burner it, come back to it, without being able to plan ahead on it, without being able to kind of carry that thought between each instant working on it. If we'll only work on the kind of problems that we can sit down and do instantly in one sitting, in one quick attack, sort of like reading a random internet article, then we're limiting ourselves greatly in the ways we can impact the world around us. So this is one of the reasons why it's so important for us to exercise our attention. I'm curious in the comments if there's things that you do, besides maybe reading or game development, that you find help you exercise your long-term attention. Thank you as always for tuning in. I'll have another video for you tomorrow.